Nothing but a number promises engaging content tailored just for you. Join us as we dive deep into discussions on topics that matter to our communities.
You believe it? I'm here in my home studio here in Augusta, Georgia. Honored to bring to you such a phenomenal guest today, Miss Sharmori Lewis. Miss Lewis, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. Please, for the listening audience here, because I know there's so many great people here that's listening, can you please tell them a little about who you are as far as your background?
Yes, so I'm Shamari Lewis. I'm the Community Outreach Specialist for the CSRA area for Senior Medicare Patrol.
All righty. And are you a native of Augusta or?
So I'm not a native of Augusta.
Okay.
My father is, but I
Okay.
am a native Georgia Peach at heart.
All righty, I tell you. All right, well, welcome. Let me
Thank
say that. I'm
you.
so glad to have you here as a guest. I know that you and I, we have been doing some great collaborations when it comes to the scope of fraud. I know this talking that we're going to have today, this edition of our podcast is going to be based on fraud. So again, with what you do in reference to the S&P program, and I know that you probably hear this all the time, like I do. It's all about alphabet soup here when you're in the aging network.
hmm
So when we say S&P, can you elaborate more what S&P stands for and a little bit more about what it's all about?
Sure. So S&P stands for Senior Medicare Patrol, just a short and sweet version of it. S&P is a nonprofit organization that is funded by Administration for Community Living, which is ACL. And we educate and empower Medicare beneficiaries, their caregivers, and family members on Medicare fraud, errors, and abuse.
All right, awesome, awesome. What was it about? And I think I'm curious because I know a lot of us we have different stories about how we stumbled into aging. For me, it was my great grandmother who passed away at 103 years old. So she was born in 1897. So I used to
Okay.
love hearing stories about how her life was back in the early 1910, 1920s, and knowing how she was able to survive to early 2000s. So for me, she was one of the major reasons why I wanted to be in aging because of my love for the older adults. So anytime that I'm talking around or being around our senior populations, I get giddy, I get excited because I
Mhm.
love being around them because you learn so much about it. So what was it about fraud that kind of sparked your interest in that?
So I actually stumbled into fraud. Um, My background is in public health. So I have a bachelor's and master's in public health, bachelor's in public health, master's within it, but also concentrated within community health education. Um, I've, I technically, it's kind of hard to say. So public health found me
Hmm.
more so than I found it. Since I was little, I've had a passion for a little bit of the medical field on top of a little bit of the community spin to it. I've done volunteer services since, I don't know, I was like 5 within the Atlanta community at the time. I got into the public health kind of like slash medical field because of my dad. My dad had a brain tumor at 2, and I would kind of like go around the house and play doctor with him and make sure
Yes.
that he was good to go and had his bandages and stuff. And as I grew up, I realized that science and math were more of my forte subjects. I love all subjects, but those in particular were my biggest forte. So I realized I enjoyed STEM. And then afterwards, of course, when you kind of go into that period of like, oh, I'm going to high school. Do I want to do biology or do you want to do something else? And I'm like, biology is not my thing. Like, I like biology, don't get me wrong, but I just needed something a little bit more. And then once I found out about public health, I was like, okay, this is definitely the field that I need to be in. But I've done research programs at Morehouse School of Medicine since I was in second grade. So I have been ingrained in this public health field for years. Um, and then afterwards, when I got married, I moved to the Augusta area and happened to see a job application. I said, okay, well, I like, seniors. It's not a problem.
Right.
I have a great relationship with them. I've known my great grandparents and my grandparents, spend time with them, just really trying to cultivate and kind of be like the historian within the family and figure out a little bit more information. And once I stumbled into fraud, I said, oh yeah, this is definitely the lane I need to be in.
Yes. Man, that's such a great story, especially the background I definitely love the fact of how you were so interested with your father as
Hmm.
playing the doctor and going around the house. When you were talking about that, I had the imagery in my mind of you going around, just following him,
Yes.
like so it's just so amazing seeing that. But it's amazing because the fear when you talk about fraud, a lot of people say, well, this would never happen to me until it happens. I'm
Hmm.
putting both hands up because I myself was a victim of fraud, and my
Oh,
wife and I, we always say, well, I'm college educated. I won't be, I won't find myself being a victim. But I found
right.
myself being a victim in reference, one of those little scams saying that was too good to be true. And
Yes.
prayerfully, I was younger when it happened, but I was still a victim, and I want to share that as well. But what are some of the things now that people should really watch out when it comes to fraud? Because it seems like it's being rampant now. I mean, people are getting phone calls or people are knocking at the door, and it's just so many opportunities now with the social media. There's so many things now that
Hmm.
out there. Can you talk about some of the scams and some of the things about fraud that people need to kind of watch out for, or just to kind of alert the audience about what's going on?
Yes. So within our senior population right now, the hottest scams that we're seeing from our complex interaction specialist, that's a part of our team, and it's within all S&Ps. Um, right now is urinary catheter scams.
Hmm.
Those are really hot ones. I don't know why people want to scam people out of that, but they do the typical durable medical equipment, or as we call it, DME.
Hmm.
Right now, the COVID scams have slowed down, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Genetic testing scams are still a big one. And right now, it's ramping up slowly, but it's the Medicare card scams that is becoming a huge scam for right now because of the fact that new ones are coming out and they see the paper cards and they think that it can get laminated and there's like, oh well, I need to get that done. It's like, no, you can't get it laminated. Just keep it plain as simple as it is when it comes in the mail to you. So a lot of people have been really calling our hotline because of that.
Yeah. I tell you, you definitely said a lot of great tips when it comes to those scams, particularly with the Medicare one. It's interesting because I've heard of just about most of those that you said, except for the urinary tract, the catheter scam. So that
Hmm.
that's interesting. Can you tell us just a little bit more about how a person may fall victim of that?
So, what we normally try to educate our seniors on, of course, check your MSNs or your Medicare Summary Notice or
Hmm.
your EOBs, Explanation of Benefits, to see if you have like any inkling of fraud on there. A lot of times people will say all the time, especially during my presentations, I ask them, raise your hand confidently. This is a safe space. If
Right.
you have read your MSNs or do you think of it as just a piece of trash? And many of them raise their hand saying, I just think of it as trash. So
Hmm.
we do have a presentation discussing how to read it properly and to understand it and to also identify fraud if you have seen something on your statements about that.
Hmm.
But with urinary catheter scams, it's very new, like very, very fresh,
Yes.
but you'll be surprised. Sometimes some scammers will, put on your document that you've been to the hospital and you've actually had this particular service done and it's considered a DME scam. And they'll say, oh, well, we're going to bill you for this service and think that Medicare is going to take care of that particular charge. In reality, of course, once it does get pinned it through, Medicare will take care of it, and then after that, they'll get paid for it. However, the person that actually is the beneficiary trying to see, well, I've never went to the hospital, I don't know where this charge is coming from, then they're now affected from it and they become a victim of fraud.
Yes. That's thank you so much for that information. I know that when you said that, Medicare summary notices, you're speaking of the little sheet of paper that comes from the hospital that says,
Yes.
this is what the provider, will pay for, this is what your insurance pay for, and this is what you may be
Mm-hmm.
responsible for. Just for the
Right.
listening, y'all just trying to figure out, okay, what is he talking about as far as the MSNs? Because
Yes.
I'm just throwing away, they may be throwing away in the trash and not, paying attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
But from my me contacting so many people, I've seen how a lot of people have been taken advantage of, and they notice things on their MSNs that they don't have. They may have went in for a routine checkup, and next thing you know, they have X-rays and other services that wasn't
Yes.
billed during that time frame. So if those individuals that are listening now, if they hear or if they see that on their MSN, what would be the recommendation what you would have for them to do as far as for them to rectify that situation?
It would be best for them to call our hotline number, which is 877-272-8720, and they can definitely report that information to our S&P toll-free hotline number. They'll speak to our complex interaction specialist who is alive all the way. It is not just a remote person, but they'll talk to you and speak to you and potentially develop a case. And sometimes when we get those particular cases, if it's just a little bit more than what we can do, we pass it on to the appropriate agency and then they'll take care of it.
See, and that's good to know because I know a lot of times people sometimes they get so frustrated, so when they contact you or others, they may already have been frustrated because they've spoken to so many people that couldn't help them. But knowing that if you're not able to help them, you will definitely help them out to go to the right agency. That's such a blessing. So I really appreciate
Yes.
what you and your staff are doing there, there in the S&P office. Now, with that though, when it comes to that, if there's because I know there's somebody out there like myself that you gave the number before. Do you mind saying it one more time for those of
Sure.
individuals out there that are trying to still find it, trying to look for a pen and or trying to find something to write with? Please give that number one more time for our listening audience.
Okay, so it's going to be 877-272-8720. And then you can also visit our website because we have fully revamped it. It is wonderful and beautiful. It is excuse me, stopmedicarefraud.org. Again, stopmedicarefraud.org.
Now, thank you again, Shamar, with that information as far as the website, stopmedicarefraud.org. You said. Want to make
Mm-hmm.
sure. With that, is that specific for Georgia or is that nationwide that people can go and get that information?
No, this is nationwide. So for our S&P, just want to retract for a minute. Each S&P is a grantee under the Administration for Community Living. So each state has their own, excuse me, to have their own sponsor. For us, for the state of Georgia, Louisiana, and Mississippi, we're all funded under Advise Well. So when you go to the website, you'll probably see Advise Well at the top somewhere, just to show who we are. But for that particular website, is welcome to any and everybody.
See, that's awesome. So that way we know because there may be some people in the listening audience listen to our podcast that may have loved ones in South Carolina or Florida or
Hmm.
or either in DC and trying to figure out who can they call when it comes to these fraud. Um,
For sure.
could you also just for those that are tuning in and they may have missed some of the portion of what we spoke about it before, can you let people know what S&P is all about and some of the things to watch out for so they could be more proactive in the event that they may find themselves being in a fraudulent situation. Like in other words, like some of the great tips that you can give to them.
Okay, so some good tips that we always share on our Facebook page, and again, with the states that we happen to cover, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, we always have a quick, fraud tip of the month. I would tell people always read your MSNs or your EOBs or your Medicare summary notices, those letters that you get every 3 months. To always double check them, make sure that everything is good and intact. If you see something that's just a little bit suspicious or you just don't feel comfortable, we tell people first, please call your primary care provider first. Make sure that everything is good on their end because the people that are doing the billing and coding, they are human, just like you and I. They do make mistakes. Sometimes it may be a 001 for coded as annual wellness, where they could have accidentally typed in 101 and it could have been for something way different. So you want to call, verify, make sure everything is good on that end before you do contact us. Again, if you still don't feel comfortable, reach out to us. We'll definitely be able to help you to satisfy your needs. We do not give you reports back, but you will feel comfortable to know that it has been reported. Normally, we tell people if you do call us and you have some documentations, that'll be great because sometimes we do ask for you to kind of send it over via email to make sure that we do have the documents covered just in case it takes it, a little bit further than what it should be. But sometimes it's normally just a quick fix that can be, done and pretty much situated in like 5 to 10 minutes.
Jamori, thank you so much again for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to probably thank Sharmori Lewis, our community outreach specialist with the S&P program, stands for Senior Medicare Patrol Program, for her taking the time out to do another edition of what we call our Nothing But a Number podcast. Sharmori, thank you so much for that information. My prayer here is that people will be impacted by the great information that you have shared with them. And for one more time, for that person that found the pen to write, can you please give your telephone number one more time, in reference
Yes.
so that people can contact you?
All right. So the telephone number is 877-272-8720. And you can also follow us on our Facebook pages. For the state of Georgia, it's going to be Georgia, spelled all the way out, Senior Medicare Patrol, all together. If you happen to live in Louisiana or have some family members there as well, same thing. Louisiana, Senior Medicare Patrol. Same thing for Mississippi, Senior Medicare Patrol. And we also have a Spanish page as well. So for our bilingual people out here, we also have one to reach out to you and to also share with your loved ones as well.
Sharmori Lewis, Community Outreach Specialist, S&P program. Thank you so much for your time. This has been another edition of our Nothing But a Number podcast, brought to you by AARP Georgia. Have a great day.
And that's a wrap on today's episode of Nothing But a Number. Thank you so much for joining us and diving into the conversations that shape our communities. We hope you found today's discussion enlightening and inspiring. Remember, new episodes drop every Wednesday at 12 noon on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. To stay up to date with all our latest episodes and to continue exploring the topics that matter most to you, be sure to subscribe and follow Nothing But a Number on your preferred podcast platform. Your engagement and support means the world to us. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider sharing it with friends and family who might also find value in our content. Until next time, stay informed, stay connected, and we'll meet you right here next Wednesday. Take care.